excited to bring Frans Riemersma from MartechTribe onto today's episode. And it's going to be an enlightening conversation. I met Frans at Mopsapalooza in person this year. We decided to do this. So, Frans, um, welcome to the show. I'm Frans. I'm excited to talk about ways to buy software.
Hi, Nadia. Good to see you again. We've spoken many times, and yes, this is one of my favorite topics.
Well, I feel like I know you way too well, but I'm sure there are some people, I don't know if there are any people who might not know you. I feel like you're everywhere. But if they don't know you, just do a quick little overview of where you've been, what you've done, who you are, and why they should pay attention to this.
Okay, I'm one of you. Background in marketing and development. So since end of last century, 96, 97, started coding and doing marketing at the same time, and I was like, this will be big one day. So what I'm doing is I'm helping companies with finding the right tools, combining the right tools, and finding the right amount of investments, where to invest, divest. I teach in business schools and universities also because I like the interaction with seasoned CMOs who take part in those courses. I learn a lot from what is actually the question that they have regarding software and technology, AI, of course. And of course, I publish a lot around this topic. So yeah, I'm an eternal student, I would say.
I feel like that's the only way to go about it because this is your number. The number of tools just keeps growing.
Yes, I lost count, but thanks for reminding me. Yeah, and we keep counting up and down, up and down. It's yeah, a constant stream of what we call internally pay dirt. I don't know if you know this from Gold Rush. Yeah, and there are many gold nuggets in there, but the question is, how do you plow through it? Because you don't have to know them all. Maybe you just need one or two skills to, slice and dice through this entire landscape. So there you go.
Do we actually need skills anymore because of all of the yellow flashes on this map? Or the skills have been replaced by the little box that says, what would you like to do today?
Exactly. I love that. That box is basically changing the game because now we need to know what we want. And all the time we've been working on tools, plumbing, making sure the flows work, the automation flow. Oh, the integration is not there. We miss some data. And right now it's more like, okay, what is it you want to do? And that's scary for many people I see because now suddenly we need to know what we want and actually what our client wants. That changes that shifts the whole game, and that is something I'm really excited about. So yes, you see a lot of software as a service in here now, boosted and powered by AI. A lot of those tools are now embedding AI in some way, shape, or form as an co-pilot, assistant, or maybe an agent, or even building your agents. And now, yeah, we are seeing a huge expansion of the capability. So I would say, and feel free to disagree, Nadia, but all the tools are there, all the data is there, all the talent is there. So why don't we have seamless, flawless customer experiences out there?
It's actually $1 million question. And I feel like the theory always makes things so easy because in theory, you have only so few exceptions. In reality, just like any dictionary, like any language, like any grammar, there's more exceptions to the rule than the rules themselves. And I feel like that's part of why even buying software has become so difficult. It's like you're playing the guessing games. Everybody's got AI. Everybody's got everything that integrates. You want to bring this data from XYZ? No problem. We do that, and you buy it and you get it and you start implementing it, and 6 months later you're still like, well, you promised something else which it's not. And I love how when we were at the coffee shop at Mopsapalooza this past fall, we were sitting at the table joking, you being from Amsterdam, we've kind of found this common pain of like, people should stop buying software like drug dealers in Amsterdam. I mean, we clearly couldn't make it the title of the session for all the obvious reasons, but I would love for you to kind of extrapolate, what's in that saying.
I'm using it a lot when I teach, where I go like, do your homework first, or else you end up asking your software vendor if the software is doing everything you want. That's like asking your drug dealer, are drugs good for you? What do you think they will say? Yeah, you will feel fine, really great, and you will need more. And now I'm putting software vendors in the same place as drug dealers. No such thing. I mean, software vendors are and I've worked for software vendors for a long time. So I know exactly if this is what you ask, then we will try to give you this. But here's the caveat. People don't know what they need. And this is coming back to your point, like the dialogue box. What is it you need? What is it you want? Oh my God, we actually don't really know. We thought the software vendor will tell us, or the drug dealer, or whoever else. So that is very dangerous. And I think this has to do with data illiteracy and maybe martech maturity, where you have to grow to a point where you dare to take decisions, where you dare to take responsibility, which is something I like. Somebody said the other day, responsibility is the ability to respond. It doesn't
Interesting.
have to be the right response, but just respond, because then you will learn. It's a way of experimentation if it works or not. And normally after 5 times, you get it. So that is a way to get over the hill and understand how data, how MarTech works. And if you do this, then quickly you get to, some kind of overview. This is what the bare minimum is. So here's the magic question. Ask yourself and your team, not what do you need else, but what can we leave out? What will break down? Do we lose revenue if we don't have this particular button or feature set? What will break down? And don't go into the game of, yeah, but we might need it in 5 to 10 years. You don't buy software nowadays for 5 to 10 years, because if you think about it, RFPs take like 6 to 9 months to just set them up, agree upon, blah, blah. Then on top, you selected a tool, you implement it. So let's say down the line, 9 months more, 18 months. 18 months is a lot longer than OpenAI's roadmap. Uh, they release every other month something. So
That's
you
actually
have to be,
scary.
that's scary. Yeah, it's a losing game. It's flipping the game. So now you have to be in a situation where you have to dare to take decisions, responsibility. Yeah, and just fail forward. That's the AI era, I think.
It's interesting. So you mentioned RFPs, right? And kind of how people try to go with more is more, as opposed to what do I not need and what am I trying to solve for? I was in the GovTech industry for a while, and
Mm,
I would talk to different government officials who would need to buy software, and maybe at the local level, whether it's a city or county, they were too small to have a proposal writer to create that RFP of what features and functions within specific software they were looking for. So what they would do, they would go Google it, and that's a true story. They would Google, how do you write RFP for government, right? They would get a copy of someone else's RFP, they copy paste it and add bullets to it for additional things that they know is important to them. So when
yeah.
that RFP goes out into the market, the vendors look at it and it's like, it's a garden plate of everything. Nobody can match the requirements 100%. Everybody says that they will do all of these things. The governments buy this, being uninformed in technology, because that's not their primary business area, right? They buy it and then they're extremely unhappy. And I feel like the same thing happens in marketing, because you have people that may not necessarily have come from science backgrounds, math backgrounds, STEM backgrounds, or analytics backgrounds, but they feel the pressure to have the tools that do all of the data things and all of the measuring things so they can justify what they do day to day. And you end up with a lot of promises that were made but not kept.
Yeah, 100%. And often made mistake here is also the client is not the user. So you're buying all this software and you're just hoarding features, just like we are hoarding data. And that's pure FOMO driven. Maybe I missed something, and then, they kick me out, I lose my job. And that's not necessarily a good incentive or a good KPI. So I think managers should flip it and say, okay, talk to all the users, tell me what you're using. I was talking earlier this day about a company wanting to change their from one system to another. I think it was a CMS. And they just said, yeah, anything new is better. No, what you have right now is gold, because this is your RFP. And then a little bit extra for the next 2 years, and you're golden. And then you grow, And yeah, but Frans, you don't understand. Then in 3 years, we have to do it all over again. Yeah, because the world is changing and your company is changing. And if you don't need to buy a software because you're irrelevant.
Humans don't like change. Change is hard. Change is trying to accept something which is new and uncomfortable and makes you go slower. And I feel like we're preconditioned to go fast from day one. And that lack of familiarity pushes you to look at things that maybe are not even relevant. Like here, I always feel like good marketing sometimes is a blessing and a curse. Because if you're the victim of someone else's good marketing, right, you end up getting something you don't need. And when that's martech, right, that's us marketers buying martech. So
Yeah.
either enough influencers got paid on social media, and look at that, everybody's talking about the brand. Or the salesperson, I've been on the brand side 7 times on 7 different occasions working for brand companies, right, not being on the martech side. But I go
Mm.
and ask questions, and the salesperson tells me how this platform will do this, this, and that. And they're not lying, they're honest. They just don't understand the complexity of my business use case because they're not doing my job. They were trained on the basics of what their software does, right? So I feel like if I never probed enough, like somebody told me, this is way before AI even became like the mainstream of everything, right? They said, we have this predictive modeling in our tool. So we're going to tell your sales team what opportunities, just like the ones that they opened, are really within reach. They just need to push harder. And I said, how are you going to do that? I said, we're going to look at your Salesforce data. And then from there, we're going to make all of the assumptions. We're going to look at the timeline, how long things take, right? And I said, I don't think it's going to be the right use case for me, because our Salesforce is a mess. Our data is a mess. And then the sales team does not open opportunities until they're 75% sure the opportunity will close, because they got a quota on open to close ratio. So they will hoard opportunities until they're sure. So how is your model going to get skewed? And I blew that sales guy's mind, because that's not what he was trained on. He was trained on selling this feature, which was amazing. But again, does everyone do that? Probably not.
Well, that's the thing. This is such a nice example of doing your homework first. I remember I just explained I was working for a software company, martech company, for some years, and I remember the very first client call I received, and I was VP R&D, so heading up support and all those training and hosting, development. Very first call, Mr. Riemersma, if you offer us one more training, I will cancel the license right here, right now. And I wasn't offering anything, but they had been, offered another training. And I said, you're intriguing me. Tell me, why not? And he said, it's very simple. The training is about your software. You have to train us about us, our use cases. And we presented 3 use cases. That's why we bought the software. And you're training us in a tool. So tell us how to go from let's say from Amsterdam to Paris, instead of explaining that the steering wheel will make you, go nicely through the curve.
That is so accurate. And I feel like marketing teams, when you think about marketing teams by Martech, right? You have a very diverse team in terms of skills, capabilities, needs, what people are looking for. And usually, like if you have demand gen side of marketing buying something, right? They're incentivized by number of opportunities that this thing will help them generate so they can be the heroes for the sales team, right? And then you have the ops team or the rev ops team that is very, very skeptical and jaded, because they're the ones that have to connect the dots. So you have excited people buying things and the promise of a brighter future. And then you have the people that have to connect the dots. And I feel like more ops people, rev ops people, they're just so jaded. They're so skeptical. And sometimes it's a rift within the team. You said we want this, but I'm telling you it's not going to work, because what I know is something you should know, but they don't want to know it because the promise was too good and they have to deliver on the ROI.
And that's the thing. So what you hit the nail on the head. What I see in in MarTech and marketing operations and RevOps. And if you're mature, you look at your own company, your own customer, and you know what is good. If you're not mature, you rely on externals to explain you how it works, like the drug dealer. It's good for you. And what can you do? So it sounds too good to be true. And you really trust, and this is the most dangerous thing, that a tool will tell you what is the next best lead or opportunity. Really? Really? That's crazy. That's like sitting in a car and it will tell you where to go. No, you have to know where you want to go.
Well, Google Maps will send you places. You probably don't want to be in many of them, but it will send you if you ask.
But yeah, it's like a martech roulette, I would say. Yeah.
So as we kind of move along, I know you have a kind of strategic fit assessment that we will talk here shortly, but just to kind of close the loop on this one, I wanted to include this quote, and we had it from a client of ours. I mean, being on the MarTech side of things, CaliberMind is marketing analytics space. We had this proverbial quote where people said they claimed all of these abilities to do things that we needed. And when you need something, you want to focus on the positive of the promise that yes, it will do it. But then the reality hit, and people realize that the data, while all of us think about data being commoditized, it's not really the right fit, the right model, the right size, the right format of the data that they could ingest. So again, this disillusionment happened when the plumbing people got involved, the ones that connect the dots. But back to what you have in your framework as far as like the strategic fit assessment, how do we avoid situations where the disappointment happens and the requirements differ from the people that go to market to ask for things and create their short list versus people that actually use it and create the implementation roadmap? So take us through your assessment.
Well, yeah, we've done 10 years of data collection of tools, stacks, and RFIs, RFPs, and continue to do so, except now in an automated manner with scraping machine learning and AI agents. And the thing is, what struck me always, and that is what you're looking at right now, is that we are many times not doing our homework. And what does that mean? That means, or that shows, in the way that we are trying to solve strategic problems with technology. It will tell us who our client is. No, it won't. It will clean all our data. All the data? Why? Which data? What do you need? Do you know? So we always, or many times, if we're immature, we're trying to solve process and strategy problems with technology. And this is a very simple graph where we ask multiple people and even scrape online, how are they talking about their own operations? How is their strategy? And the strategy is nothing else than definition of your customer and your goals. Have you defined them well and in such a manner that people can execute on it? And that is where the processes come in. So if the processes have a very low maturity, you know that the goals are maybe defined, but we can't work with them. We can't translate them in our daily jobs. So if you can't do that, you don't know what business critical processes are. So in that case, we don't hoard all the data in the MarTech. We just hoard processes. We standardize them all until eternity. That doesn't work either. And then finally, if you have your strategy and your client defined and you have the right process, then finally you can start looking at your technology. And this slide, it's almost a magical insight where, and believe it or not, sometimes marketing and IT become friends on the spot. I'm not kidding you. And the reason is that they look at each other and go like, remember that project? It didn't work because I thought it was you. And they both say the same thing. Of course, it's always the other, right? But in this case, they go like, but we were solving the wrong problem with technology. It would never work. I've seen, for instance, one company who had 14 collaboration tools, 14, like Trello, Basecamp, Asana, all of those. And they said, Frans, we probably need a better planning tool, like a marketing resource management tool, and really, top down. I said, no, that's still micromanagement. The problem is this. I hadn't seen anything but the 14 tools of collaboration. And I said, I bet my head on it that you guys are sitting in a lot of meetings with a lot of people, many times, taking note. You know why? Because there's no strategy. So you have to make it up along the way. And the wrong people have to make it up because you're not having the mandate to set that strategy. So you have to cover yourself and you document the hell out of everything. It's so simple.
I actually had people that spent the entire time on a meeting typing things up with all the co-pilots, with Fireflies, with everything else. They're typing up notes. And the next time you meet with them, they're pulling up that list of bullet points and they're saying, okay, so what are we going to do about number one, number two, number three? When in reality, it doesn't even matter what those one, two, three that were documented are. The question is like, how are we getting closer to what we set out to achieve? Are we at all? But that's a different way of kind of flipping the script on it. And I think it's just
Yeah.
not everybody thinks about it right away because it's much easier to follow the checklist.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If there's a high level of insecurity, psychologically, we cling on to that what we know. And those are mostly details, buttons, plugs, but not the picture. We don't look at it from a high level anymore, or bare minimum, like what is it we really, really need. So here especially, we have to look at, okay, what is the minimum we need to know about our clients and our goals, and then translate it. So this whole picture is making sure that we talk about the right things. We're solving the right things with technology, and we can only automate what we have standardized in the process, and we can only standardize what we have defined in the strategy. And it's as simple as that. And now people go like, oh, we first have to have a strategy. I'll wait. No. You can define what an MQL is together with, I don't know, a bunch of other people and say, this is a working title or a working format. We'll take it from there. And now we have an MQL defined. So from now we know that first it's John, then it's Sarah, and then it's someone else who hands over this MQL. And when we lose the deal, in 2 years, we'll send it back to marketing and they take it from. So this is the process. And now you can set up your whole martech with segments and buckets and what have you to make sure that MQL is routed in the right way. As simple as that. Yeah.
So definitions drive maturity, what I'm hearing.
100%. Yes. What are we talking about? So once we have that, now we can focus on technology. And what you see here is the top 7 most valuable tools for a specific industry. So we learned that by industry, the set of tools you need is very different. Or even if you need the same tool, like a CRM, you need it very differently in very different industries. So in some cases, CRM is nothing more than a digital Rolodex. I'm so sorry. And in other cases, it's a high performing tool that you really have to have in real time. And all too often for years, we have been selling CRM like, yeah, we all need a Ferrari. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I just need the wheels and, that's how it works. So this is the top 7. And you see this thin line going down. This is where you see the correlation between outperformers maturing in a specific area. And then also having a higher revenue per employee ratio, so company value, whatever. It's all mechanics. We can talk about it later, but it shows where are they driving value, because that is what you want to do. And normally with these reports, we tell people like, okay, if an outperformer would have your stack, this is what they would do. And they would uplift, the company value by X. So we're not talking about an ROI of a martech. We're talking about really delivering value to the revenue per employee ratio, to the company value. So that's really more compelling also for CFOs and others to get an idea. And here you go. This is the top 7. Normally, stacks have at least 30 categories covered. So if you would follow this line down, yeah, there is some martech that does not really add value, but does consume your resources. So you might want to reallocate that and turbo boost this. Because the other day, a client of mine said, Frans, you think you're in martech? I said, well, yeah. What else am I doing? So no, you're in noise canceling. I said, that's a good one. So in fact, we're now talking about the right things, and that's what you want. So with IT and marketing, they end up in fights because first of all, we're trying to solve strategy and process problems with technology. And once we're in technology, we just follow, whatever an analyst is saying or whatever hype is out there. But that's not relevant for you necessarily. So here we talk about the right things that drive your value.
It's actually interesting because when we start talking to clients that are looking for a reporting tool, right, to prove marketing value and what marketing is doing to the rest of the business, the biggest challenge is not the fact that they actually, need yet another attribution tool, for example. The
No.
biggest challenge is that departments cannot agree on the numbers that are being presented. Because
Yeah.
somebody gives you a number during a QBR, on the marketing side. This is what, whatever they had, some silo saying LinkedIn said or Google Ads said, right? And the salespeople are critical, skeptical creatures. They have to be because that's the nature of the environment, right? They question that. And until their definitions and until you get down to a framework which is defined, back to your strategy, back to what does this mean? How does this match all my other systems?
Yeah.
People cannot even use all the other features that whatever it is that they bought could offer them because they cannot agree on the basics. So again, back to your point, like having those points where multiple teams agree, once you clear that threshold, turns out you already leaped forward so much, and it wasn't technology, it was just the framework and the strategy enabled by technology.
I am so with you. The other day, there was a CMO for the business university. We're working on a business case for their company with their company data, and yeah, they had to be more efficient. That was the goal by X. And I go like, what does more efficiency mean in your case? How is it defined? Well, not really. It's more for less. Yeah, more of what and less of what? Is that defined? No, not really. And suddenly we entered into a whole metric and units type of conversation, and now we have KPIs. Okay, now we can start measuring. And if we share this internally, it's scary because you basically, it's the emperor's clothes. You're telling you we have no clue. But if you come up with some of those things, people go like, pretty quickly like jump on the bandwagon. You're like, oh, maybe this is the best definition there is. So yeah, that's the responsibility, the ability to respond, making sure you know what you're talking about. Yeah, this is one of my favorites because with AI, we're we're not moving away from tools. We're moving into a new realm of capabilities. What is it exactly in terms of capabilities that we need? This one is about data layer capabilities. So you need to source data, you need to unify it, you need to make sure you have some analytics in there, you have a customer view, etc. Until you really, with reverse ETL, send it into your channels. And this is showing you what your tool is doing in combination with your maturity. So I'm running, for instance, for a retail corporate with 7 brands, seven of these researchers stack benchmarks. And you see that sometimes they have the same tool, but with different maturity. So now they know who's the expert in their group, and now they can learn from each other. And what are your tips and tricks? Does that work for us as well? So capabilities are really important in terms of what are the skills, but also the feature sets that we really, really need. So if you talk about the responsibility definition, that's what we have been doing here. We have a database full of requirements, RFIs, and linked to data. And now we can extrapolate, okay, you're using these tools for data. This is what they normally cover. Your maturity self-assessed is what is XYZ, and then we take it from there. And they get a pretty good picture. You see where the most value is. In this case, I think they need to learn a little bit more about data modeling because they have low capabilities, tools, and in maybe staffing. And it's one of the value drivers. And that is really good to know.
And it's a perfect example of one of those very niched, very specialized skills that a lot of us take for granted because
Yeah,
it, again, that's not your day job. You just assume that it should be there by default. And it's not. It's a whole ocean of knowledge within itself. And
yeah,
some of the features, even within CaliberMind, we have custom dashboards where people can build whatever they want based on their KPIs for whatever role on their marketing team, where this person looks at whatever is relevant to their role, this person looks at something else, but it all ladders up to the business OKRs. And people ask us, well, what's the difference between you and like Domo, for example, right? Or you and Looker? And it's the data modeling piece that you can build it or you can have something that already has in it. If you build it, which you can absolutely do with if you have data science people, how much time, resources, human effort, and tolerance for margin of error will you have? So it's almost like you assess everything, again, back to the topic of buying software, right? You assess everything against the lens of like, okay, you gave me this easy button promise. Will it translate to what I'm trying to solve for? Do I have resources to pick up the slack, things that I will uncover that you may not have? And if I don't have those resources, what other questions should I ask to make sure I kind of overcompensate for it up front before I sign the contract?
And that's very important. Data modeling is, I think, one of the, and this is just one case. I'm not even sure which industry this is, but it differs by industry. These lines and value add, but data modeling is always a part of this. This, by the way, it reads from left to right. Then you follow the entire data layer process. Yeah, data modeling is. I think data illiteracy is in general one of the biggest topics. Not knowing what data to use, how to use data. You touched upon it earlier about data, not knowing how to integrate the data. If you don't know, you integrate everything with everything, but you really need to know, no, these 3, 4 fields, data points are critical. And again, there you need to be able to make those calls and decisions and say, yeah, but these are important. And if you do this, everything shifts. The conversations with software vendors, with data delivery companies, internally with your management, with your team, immediately you will have focus.
So defining those business critical and mission critical requirements as the
Yeah,
minimum viable product, that's a must, that's a non-negotiable, and then show me all the other bells and whistles that you sell.
exactly. The must-have features, the must-have data points. And this is asking the magic question. What can I leave out without breaking revenue or losing revenue? And trust me, 9 out of 10 times, if you only get to the must-haves and implement them and make them actionable and activate them, you're outperforming competition and you're done. And then you don't even have time for the nice to have, like, yeah, we might need it in 2 years. You just make it to the next year, because everything shifts so fast. Yeah.
Everything is on fast forward. And I feel like we get to this value creation. And I know you presented this at MOPSA and you put it as um, customer value creation, right? I kind of changed it a little bit from the user value creation. Challenge me on this one. Tell us what the differences are.
I like both, and both are important and are, let's say, not mutually exclusive. So one of my favorite things is to humanize MarTech, take it from a human angle. Now, customers and users are both humans. Great. So that's what, is unifying them. And I do believe if the UX is really good of a software tool, the value, you have user value creation, it's easy for you to use the tool. And some people say happy employees, happy customers. And I believe that really works. What ultimately is always the touchstone is the customer value. Are we delivering value? And if you as a user or an employee know what the customer really, really needs, what is an MQL is not just what we think as a company, but what defines that particular persona or particular MQL, then suddenly it all shifts. So outside in, that's what I would recommend, not inside out. So customer value, and this is what I started calling some time ago value engineering. We need to engineer value, and it's actually easier than we think. And this is what we do at the Business University all the time. That we look into the data and say, okay, what is it these people do all the time? Where do they click? How do they talk? And you can list. There's this beautiful example of a persona gone wrong, where they just wrote down. It was, I think you know this one. You should see the picture. It's hilarious. Something like lives in a castle, has 2 dogs, has been married twice, that kind of stuff. And then you think of Prince Charles, of course, but it's also Ozzy Osbourne. And they're both called Prince, right? Prince of Darkness and Prince of, well, there you go. So that is how we have been doing it, because again, data literacy, we don't know what really defines our customer, but many times it's 2 or 3 things you go like, hey, that's interesting. One of my CMOs that participated said, I have two personas, a non-persona and a persona. So explain what a non-persona is. Those are the ones we don't want, but they waste 40% of our sales reps' time on demos. And I say, okay, how do you distinguish? He started looking into the data and he found a pattern. He found that the non-persona in the second and third meeting did not invite any team members. They were just self-educating themselves. Okay, now we can say, please invite people. If you don't, then here's a very interesting education program that we have for you. Otherwise, here's the demo for your team. And that is how you do it. This is now a persona you've been activating. Now it's not Prince Charles anymore, but it's somebody where you see, okay, certain behavior, no go. Certain behavior, yes, different bucket, next level in the funnel.
I actually respect that a lot for brands opting out people that they don't want because they did all of their homework on their profiling to save the wasted time for the prospect and themselves. Quick anecdote here before we go into your framework. Having worked for larger companies, CaliberMind is a smaller company, having worked for larger companies on the enterprise side, you kind of get used to certain tools and having certain functionality. So I reached out to one of the tools that I used in the past and I said, hey, I would love a demo because the tool has evolved, there's new features. Would this work for our use case? And when I filled out the demo form, I got an email that says, based on your company profile, we don't think that you're the right fit, but if you'd like to learn more about us, here's 3 blogs that you can read. I mean, it stung a little bit. It kind of, chafed my pride. Like, here I am, I'm the demo form filled. You should be excited. But they actually created that value internally for their sales team to save them the non-fits at the end because the deal will not close. So I respect that, even though being on the receiving end, it kind of felt sour.
Yeah, there are different ways of doing that in a subtle way, but yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So take us through your framework of customer value creation. You presented that at MOPS. I thought it was phenomenal, the evolution of different maturity level of marketing ops, the team that usually is the closest to tech stack. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, we have been focusing a lot on data and technology. I mean, that's the premise. That's what we're good at. We're tech savvy and we're business savvy, but it's a little bit too much tech and data. So we're the plumbers, right? And I think that we're very good at that, and it's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but if you look at adding value, then this takes 80% of our time, and 80% of time in the wrong areas because we don't even know if it drives value. So this is why I said, okay, this is Marketing Ops 1.0, focus on your tool admin and a data hero, creating dashboards, reports. But you sit on a pile of gold because if you look at it, you can distill what people really want, what they really need. People, customers. And that is very important. So a next phase that we see is that you go into people and process. So who is actually using which of our data, which of our technology, which is already helping you to become, like we defined earlier, responsible, able to respond, make decisions, and make a call and say, okay, but actually out of this technology, we only need this part. I spoke to a lady back here in Netherlands for one of the competitors of Stripe, and they have an ops team. They do exactly this. And they say, I have a team for admin and for data, but the most important team is the team for use cases. So if we onboard anyone in the company in our tools, we don't onboard them in tools. We onboard them in the 5 use cases we have. So they know exactly what the click paths are in the certain tools, and that's it. And that's how you do it. So that is already next level marketing ops, I would say. And the last level is actually where I say, start there. Start looking at those gold nuggets, at the data. What is the customer telling you? Because customers talk to us through data. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys CaliberMind attribution. They click or they don't. They purchase or they don't. They switch on, they switch off. When and where. And if you do this, then you get a really good idea of, that's where you move away from the Prince Charles, Ozzy Osbourne type of analysis and generalizations into very specifics. And the shocking thing here is they're not 1,000 data points you learn or have to manipulate or to cover or to monitor. They're just a handful, and then you know your customer. So that's a bizarre thing. And this is how we become, I would call it value engineers. And Scott Vaughan, former CMO of Integrate, he said something very nice a couple of years ago to me. He said, the marketing and marketing ops is the customer story well told at the boardroom table. And well told means backed up by data, but more than that. It's a story. It's explaining this is what the client is trying to achieve actually, and this is how we do it. And here is a friction, and we need to fix it. And you will see that if you remove this friction by, I don't know, 5%, then maybe we have an uplift in revenue of 2%. In millions dollars, that's a lot. So many times when we do these business cases at the university, the ROIs are through the roof, not because we focus on technology and data like you're seeing here. We focus on the customer, and that's normally a factor 1 to 10, a ratio. So if you focus on tools and data, it's on efficiency. It's doing things less bad. And that is not so sexy, but it's also not so profitable. If you look at the upside, what can we sell more to customer? How can we help them remove frictions? Oh boy, that's going through the roof.
It's interesting that you put it that way, and the quote about marketing ops being the proxy to telling the story of what happened and kind of giving it color and context. My philosophy has been for the last probably decade to hire marketing ops as the first hire for a new marketing department. Usually when I come into a marketing department, I can do demand gen, to the moon and back. I can do revenue marketing to the moon and back. I can create content to the moon and back. What's the one role that will help me tell everybody else out there what I'm doing day in and day out when nobody's looking, when I'm in my own little world, right? They're not out there consuming stuff. Most companies don't even know what's on your website because they never go to their own website, right? So like marketing ops, to me, the value engineers, the translators of the story of what's happening, what they see in the data into day-to-day context, so you can present it to the rest of the executive peers in the layman's language if you need to, right? Not to bore people with definitions. Like that's important. On the flip side of that, and I'm curious on your take about this one. On the flip side, I feel like even, with attribution specifically, people focus on the data points that they cannot collect, knowing that right now there's, the GDPR rules, the cookieless stuff, the dark funnel, the offline channels and everything else. And they get so paranoid about the bits and pieces of data that they cannot collect. It clouds their judgment. They forget about the millions, trillions, gazillions of data points that they do have that can show them the trends so they can make inferences and tell that story so the rest of the business has confidence that you're moving in the right direction. And usually, like my answer to that, and I would love to hear your side, when I look at Google Analytics and the move from GA3 to GA4, I grew up in, GA. I did all the certifications up to the point of probably the last release. That's where I said, I don't have the time. But GA4 has become a trend tool, not the how much of what happened exactly on this day or that day. It kind of conditions you to look at trends. And I feel like that's kind of the message that marketing ops has to train the rest of the business on. Focus on trends, not on what you cannot see, and that ruins all the logic for you. But I'm curious if you see that when you talk to people out there.
Well, this is so spot on. This is where people feel uncomfortable because they are basically hiding behind missing data. I oftentimes hear data quality as an excuse almost. And I'm not saying data is perfect. It can't be because it's, their data streams is going on and on. But you need to know which type of data you need. And there's always data missing. And that's why we need to fill in the gaps. And maybe, and this is what we do at the universities, we say, just go to other people and make assumptions. And oftentimes I feel that if you want to have all the data points, you confuse your company with the university. You think you have to do a thesis or something. What are you trying to prove? It's empirical data. And even if you have not enough data, you still can make assumptions and then maybe align with other people and say, is this assumption reasonable? Or what do you think? Make accomplices, because you will never have all the data. And that is very important, because if anyone, this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So if anyone in the galaxy knows more about your customer, I hope, I pray it's you. So make your assumption and make that assumption official, and then work with it. And until you have the right data, the clean data, or maybe ways to figure it out, perfect. Or maybe even assumptions where you say, okay, we take wholesalers. They sell, into food distribution companies and then hope it ends up in a restaurant. If they see an uptake in a certain area where they did a commercial, you have circumstantial evidence. You have to be clever with data, and then you get the complete story.
So I feel like that's what takes us to this conversation of data literacy, adoption of software within the company, where you make sure, being the value engineer, that people are not misinterpreting things. And I feel like this could be a slippery slope. And I love this quote that you had in your presentation at MOPSA, where storytelling is data with soul. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I ran into this one, Brene Brown. I'm not sure even if she came up with it. I put her name there because she popularized it, but I just love it. So if marketing ops is the customer story well told at a boardroom table, then this is what we need to do. We need to make sure that we have the data with the soul. The soul is your intuition, your gut. It's filling in the blanks and not wildly assuming, but just trying to figure that out and then verify. And you have to go about, that thing that you assume and see if it works. If you don't, you're stalled, and then you just hoard data, you hoard technology. So you have to go, I think they say the only way out is through. Well, you have to go through this. And this is why the soul or intuition, whatever you want to call it, is so important. Make assumptions, but then verify with the data, and then you understand, and every single time try to summarize the story. So here is the thing. It's a very nice example I ran into. One of my clients, IKEA, the founder was dyslexic. So he could not instantly access all the time, like we do, almost like drug addicts, constantly into the data, technology, figuring it out, without asking the question, but what am I looking for? What is the client actually doing with our, and what data point should, so he didn't have that access. So what he did, he walked, and I know it because here in the Netherlands there's a concept store where he frequently visited. And he went literally, he walked through his store and he knew, okay, first this, then that. First, something with a low price, so everybody knows I'm in the right place. It's cheaper here than anywhere else. Oh, like the small candle lights. The small candle lights I can put into a candlestick, and then there's a side table, and this is a dialogue. This is what he did, and then he walked over to the data science department and said, "Is this making sense? Is it correct?" And then he started to match his soul with the data.
That's super interesting. And I feel like marketing relationship with data historically has been ambiguous. If there could be a case of divorce, many would have exercised that option. Unfortunately, you're married for better, for worse, so might as well figure out a way to do it, right? And we have more. I feel like the first slide with the 15,000 tools was very illustrative, right?
Yeah.
Seems like others within our business hear things. They hear metrics, they hear numbers, they come to you and they ask you all these questions. So you feel compelled to track more. So you can justify what you're doing because this system tells you this system tells you that. You go buy a new tool or look at a new tool. That vendor has a whole library of their own metrics, which they don't care whether it matches your use case or not. But wait, in our case, this means that, and then the team is like left with trying to wrap their brain around translating that into the language of your business, which sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, sometimes you shouldn't, right? And this guessing game, I think, puts us in this default position where if you're not 100% sure, you just stand still and do nothing, or you let the first person who is good at convincing and maybe gaslighting sometimes to sell you something that you don't need. And to me, like your IKEA case is so illustrative, where the applied knowledge was used to figure out the relationships of if then and what makes sense, as
Yes.
opposed to let me look at this cloud of nebulous numbers, and with my limited understanding of how this works, make an assumption that becomes the business rule, which is a scary kind of shaky ground, in my opinion.
It definitely is, but it's a much better way than like we're saying here, we want to be data driven. So let's buy tools and let's hoard data. It's like I buy a car, so I have a driver license. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to try and learn and well, not make accidents too many, but make mistakes while driving, and then they will tell you what to do. That is what you should do. I often see also that they just outsource it to a data science department. Go like, so who's your customer? How often do they buy? Ah, Frans, you don't. That's the data science department. Sorry, you're marketing. If anyone should care, it's you. So you should be on top of the data and you should be guiding data science. So and this is often what data science wants. They want to have questions so they can look into the data. Now it starts to make sense. And if you don't do it, they end up building dashboards that nobody uses.
And that's interesting to me, this use case that you illustrated. He said, or, she said, or he, however we want to put it, one department versus the other one. Walk us through this framework.
Yeah, I had a client and it was a equipment manufacturer and they were selling to universities and professors. And I was like, okay, so how does your journey work or funnel? Just tell me. They said, well, it's not that complex. It's a B2B sell. So they arrive at an event. It was their take. They arrive at an event, then they take a webinar and then they go to the product page and buy. I said, great. So how much is this in terms of data points and conversions? Oh, well, we're not sure. We didn't check it with data, and it's like, okay, red flag here. So can you give me some of the data access? Well, then you need BI tools. You need this. We are implementing. Okay, so just CSV files, please. Just give me a dump. No, well, that's too big. Just of the last 6 months. Just CSV files, please. Okay. So on a Friday afternoon, I think it took me 2 hours. I was just looking at timestamps and email addresses. And these three different, well, there were more touch points. And again, to your point, we didn't have all. We're just looking at these. There might be more, but these ones are. And I found out that they did everything right to chase people out of the funnel. And that was that every automation flow was making sure they were not delivering. It was embarrassing. It was, and we didn't tell it right away, of course, to anyone. But it's you need to find out the business case that is in there because there always is. But when we did this data exercise, the first instinct was of marketers, Frans, your data is wrong. And I said, well, it's not my data, it's your data. Yeah, your analysis is wrong. Well, it's a very simple, I'm not doing causation, correlation, nothing of the cross steps. It's just following, okay, so what should we do? I said, well, maybe talk to the customer. Let's call a bunch of professors and say, how do you go about? And then they confirmed this exact flow. And they said, first of all, we go to the product page. Because we have something that is 10 years old. We like your product, but the buttons, and can't read them anymore. They're stuck, or so we buy a new one. And it's almost like, Harry Potter. I bought the Nimbus 2000 2 years ago. I need the Nimbus 3000, right? And they go like, oh, there's a lot of new. There's a turbo booster in there as well, and it's now electric. Okay, let's go to a webinar. Educate myself around what's happening in the field. What should I know before I do my purchase? Now I know what I want. I'm good to go. And then we say, but then it makes totally no sense. You go to an event because you know what you're going to buy, right? No, you don't get it. We want to know because so much changed if you are still the same company. And this company particularly went to the stock exchange in the meantime. So there was an extra reason to go to events. And there you go. Okay, makes a lot of sense.
That's funny. And I feel like part of that, what you described, is because CRMs or whatever other systems or whatever tools that people are trying to buy, they're just black boxes, right? Again, user adoption is lacking, the data literacy is lacking. people don't know what to do with what they got. They feel compelled to do some kind of a report pool. But
Yeah.
when you're buying that tool, you never ask the question of how likely will all of my users use it? And if it's not everyone, what do I need to do to enable and empower everyone to have access to what they need? And it seems like that's kind of the morale of the story of the previous scenario where people were not using data. It was the gut feel, which in this case was wrong.
And it starts with the soul. It's a nice example. They just didn't take the next step, the data. And then the story is incomplete. So that's how you do it.
But I feel like we have to say this, there's the other side of this desire to open everything to everyone, this promise of data democratization.
Oh yeah.
It's a great word. We love democracies. We're out there, making sure everybody has access to everything. But then on the flip side, this was Joshua Cantor. I heard him on Humans of Martech. Phil Gamache does a great job bringing all these amazing thought leaders to his show. And he said, I actually don't like data democratization because you're opening numbers to people who do not know how to read it, how to interpret it, and how to make decisions based on those numbers. They tell you they want to be data driven, but they want the data to tell them what to do without having the ability to cross check and QA that data and say, does this match the reality? Is this true? Is this not true? So I feel like there's this fine line. I mean, as a matter of fact, this was a product decision that CaliberMind made to have access control so that not everybody has access to everything, to your entire analytical universe, right? Because people need to know what they need to know to make them successful in their role and not more. Otherwise, they'll get confused. But we don't often think about that.
It's so great. I spoke to an agency in Asia, and they were really big in data, and they had a very simple rule. They said we color code data. I said, okay, tell me. It's red, green, or blue. And what does it mean? Green means use it anywhere. To extrapolate, to do analysis, or maybe even email messages. Blue is first check with us, and then we'll clean it up or work with it and tell you what you can do with it or not. Red means no go. First come to us, don't use it. Tell me what you want, what you need, what you want to achieve, and then we'll help you.
I love it. I love it. Definitely gets people to think, well, proceed with caution of sorts. And I feel like that brings us to this last point where when you are shopping for software, again, back to the original topic of the conversation, don't let others tell you that they will do the homework and grade their homework themselves. Always apply your business use case. Make sure the tools that you bring will actually grade your homework in your terms, using your definitions, so that you can actually see what's moving the needle versus buying into the hype of something that you will struggle to explain to the rest of the business. Back to your, the color coding of the data. Don't tell me what your data is. If it doesn't fit into my color coding and I cannot use it, it doesn't really matter what you do. I cannot apply it to my use case.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, and did you know that a hype is nothing else than a learning curve going off the rails?
I love that. That's a more cartoonist cartoon. Like they need to create a picture with a train going into the abyss and say that's the learning curve.
I like that one. Let's brief him. Yes.
Sounds great. Well, we got three main points that we want people to take away. So I'll let you kind of sum this up. What do you want people to go home with and think about from this webinar?
Um, the first takeaway, everything starts with the customer. So take it from there. Um, um, Take it from there and then reverse engineer. And that's the instinct. It's start with a story. It doesn't have to be right. Start with a story and then look in the data and then try to see if it's verified or maybe falsified, and then take it from there. And then you have a stick in the ground. And that's the most important thing. Make sure you have a stick in the ground. You say, okay, this is the 80% of our customer base that brings 80%, of the revenue, or vice versa. Then we'll take it from there.
So I'm sure people are thinking, who am I talking to right now? It being the end of the year, the beginning of the new year. Who can I apply that to? That's a good thought.
Well, actually, if you think about it, actually with value engineering, we always say there are three questions. Who is my biggest customer? Which product or service do we sell most to that customer? and what is the margin. Now, if you think data and technology, from all the features and all the data points, it went zip, zip, zip. And now you have a focus. You don't need to boil the ocean. So, yeah, I would say that that's an important thing. Here, the one visual, I would say, um, when you evaluate, I would say the most important thing is that you stick to the tools that bring value to your company. Now, there are two ways of doing value engineering. First of all, outside in from the customer, but we have so much bloat. 99 out of 100 clients I have, they don't need more software, they need less. So,
Ironically.
yeah, and actually, I'm not saying that they can cut their budgets. That is a false assumption. But from all the software, they're not using everything because you don't need everything, because you don't need to be at every point, at every touch point in the customer journey. That would be creepy and scary for the customer. So if you look at that, then suddenly you need a 20% of all the features, data points, and use cases that bring 80% of the revenue. So that is the most important thing, I would say, for evaluating your MarTech stack. So there's the outside in, the inside out is more like what is the top value tools that you should focus on, not the rest.
Strategy first.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
So if we told people there's one question you should ask your vendors first, based on the today's conversation, what would that question be? I'm curious if you have that top of mind.
What can you leave out? What can you switch off?
That's a good one. I was thinking, what can you do for me? And then the next question would be, do you even know what I do?
Oh, yes. And I like what you said earlier. You know, you were very clear with this vendor, like, this is what I need, this is my use case. So the first question would be presenting this use case that covers maybe 80% of the revenue, or maybe 30% of the revenue. And make sure what is the biggest customer and product that's probably already covering 20-30% of your revenue. And then go to your software vendor and say, what can you know, help, how can you help in this particular case? What elements do you support?
I love it. So if people have more questions, I'm sure they will take all of that in and then the creative juices will flow and they might have questions. What is the best way to reach you if somebody wants a follow-up question?
Oh, the most important question, I think it's all about value engineering. So help me find the most important customer, because that's normally already a very difficult first step. And it takes a little bit of time, a lot of data, a bit of courage. That's one thing, the value engineering on the customer. The other thing is really on what tools bring value in my stack.
I love that. So is it fair to let people know that they can connect with you on LinkedIn if they have any more questions that we did not cover today, but yet they're going through the process?
Yes, please do. More than welcome. That's how I learn, and I will always make sure I answer your questions.
I love that. Frans, thank you so much for your time today. This was an enlightening conversation. I love the dynamic and I love the knowledge that you have. And ironically, you sit on the other side of the Atlantic, but the pain points appear to be the same here, there, everywhere.
Oh no, I love that. Yeah, after all, we're humans, and I think we're making a lot of human mistakes in technology, which is okay. But yeah, and I love the conversations with you. We had some earlier conversations. Uh, I'm going to say this was just like one of them, and I hope we have many more because it's very inspiring. Thank you so much.
That sounds great. Thank you. And with that, this concludes today's episode. On Thursday, we're going to have the very, very last episode of the year with Amanda Lansor, a friend of mine from Endeavor B2B, Chief Marketing Officer, where we will talk about delivering value in the narrative that you present to the business of what marketing is doing and why marketing needs to be invested more, put front and center, and have the strategic seat at the table. Thank you all so much for joining today. If you have questions for me or Frans, find us on LinkedIn, send your question there. Happy to participate, happy to help. And I will see you all on Thursday, this Thursday at 1 p.m. to conclude the year with the expectations of the leadership from marketing. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on Thursday.